I am headed down Highway 16 into Keystone, South Dakota. You saw this part of the footage before, but I felt it was worth coming back to because the tunnel is really cool. And I actually, with my 8th grade class, are going to be talking about rocks and why some are good for structure and others aren't so good. So, yeah, here's a tunnel that doesn't need any cement around it. It's all just native rock. But what I'm really going to take is the old Hill City Road, which connects Hill City and Keystone, and it definitely is rural and goes through the country, which kind of matches the theme here. Now, one of the things that came up is after I filmed, I guess it's 2 weeks ago, the audio, I started putting together my next video, and we got busy, but more than that, more than just being busy is the fact that as I was preparing my outlines and research, I realized that, whoa, this is an interesting time. If I would have filmed this video even 10 years ago when I moved, well, say 20 years ago almost when I moved to North Dakota, or judging by where I used to live, I would have had a totally different story about rural America. But like the rest of the country, rural America is changing. And so I suspect that sometime before the end of my life, I'll need to refilm this whole series of videos on rural America and totally change what I'm about to say now. So what I'm going to be doing the next few videos is still true, but it's in flux. Oh, here's the cool tunnel. Yeah, all native rock. Isn't that just the coolest thing? That's why I had to redo it. So one of the things with rural America is how do we define it? They'll talk about a population density and so on, but population density here in South Dakota, in the Black Hills, where it's all touristy and such, is quite different from the population density up where some of these gravel roads I've taken you on in North Dakota. It's quite different from, say, Alaska, especially out in the bush, or the Southeast, or Pennsylvania, where I grew up. So I'm going to leave rural slightly more loosey-goosey than that. Also worth noting is right here, we're in a very touristy part of rural America. Now, the town I live in is close to this. We had a lot of people go through my town. But we're quite a different town just because we're not so heavily touristy. You go through Keystone in the summer, it does not look like what you just saw, that brief little flash. By the way, we are now on the Hill City Road, which connects Hill City and Keystone. And in the summer, every place you see me crossing the railroad tracks, you have the possibility of meeting a steam engine, including one of the steam engines that was used in the movie Dances with Wolves. I'll try to remember to put a link below that's not actually on my bibliography, so hopefully I remember and change all the numbers accordingly. So the fan, as you heard, was starting to get going, so I just paused the video and went and fixed all that. So, yeah. Hill City, I've done that ride once with my parents, and I'd kind of like to go do it again. Maybe by myself. I'd just like to... they have a big talk while you're riding, so of course I'd have to be careful. That's one of the crossings. I'd have to be careful. I couldn't film the whole thing because then you would hear the talk, and that's, I'm guessing, copyrighted. But the ride is very beautiful, and of course it's a lot of scenery you do not see from the road. Unique. Now, riding in a train, you don't get to enjoy the steam engine, really, because you're sitting in a car, but still, it's kind of fun. And I got some neat photos of the train at the station with steam blasting out of it and so on. So, anyway, I was sidetracked there because this is actually a good area to illustrate, there are the people who live here. But this is an area used to a lot of diversity just because of the summer tourism. Brings a lot of people through. Now the difference, of course, is they are the outsiders and the people that live there are the locals. Sometimes locals get upset because the outsiders bring so much traffic and whatnot, or Oh, aren't the outsiders weird and that kind of stuff. Believe me, I know firsthand. I grew up in a very touristy part of Pennsylvania, so I was one of those complaining about the outsiders. Now, that's different from when the outsiders start moving in. And I remember as a kid, we had a few people from downstate moving in. We had I don't want to get too specific, but a large business that brought in a lot of outsiders, and there was definitely a little bit of tension there between outsiders and locals, and how these outsiders are ruining everything, and how they don't understand our life, and whatnot. But it's funny because most of these outsiders, air quotes there, were just like us, and now that's not so much the case. Now, I'll tell you what my first video was going to be, and this is why I didn't do it last week, because the more I researched, the more I said, oh, this is a more interesting story than I thought. My first video was going to be about the diversity in rural America. And I know there is the stereotype of white inbreds living in poverty, toothless, and picking at their banjos. And there are places where that's true. I could even point to a few of those places in North Dakota. But that's changing. There are more people moving into rural America. And rural America has always been more diverse than people think, at least in certain pockets of it. That's just accelerating as it accelerates across the country. As this generation of older white people, because back in the 70s, 80s, they would have been the majority, as they die off, we're going to see more and more minorities, religious, cultural, sexual, all those different minorities, are going to become the majority. So really, in my lifetime, it wouldn't surprise me to see the United States become if this makes any sense, majority-minority country. There's certain ethnic groups that settle different parts of the country. For example, here in North Dakota, where I live especially, we were largely settled by Norwegians. You'll find Swedish pockets around the state. You'll find German pockets and so on, Russian pockets. And, they're all white and culturally quite similar. I mean, Sweden and Norway, yeah, okay, they'll probably say there's differences, but to my outside, I just don't see it. Other parts like Appalachia was settled by the Scots-Irish and so on. And yes, they had their own culture, probably some difference there between the Scandinavians that settled here and the Scots-Irish that settled the Appalachians. But, they look the same. Well, now what we're seeing is more minorities. I have mentioned before, we are getting a fairly sizable Hispanic population in the town where I live. When I moved to the state, that just was not happening, except maybe in the cities. You're seeing more minorities of other groups also settling into these small towns. We had some Jewish people living here for a while. They left, but it was more for family reasons than anything to do with our town. You're just starting to see that all across the country. And, here's a nice census article. And one of the things the article points out is that, no, it wasn't just Norwegians and Swedes in North Dakota. What about that large Native American population there? People forget about them because they tend to live in a few very concentrated pockets called Indian reservations, but they're just as much part of North Dakota as I am, perhaps more so, because I'm an import from outside the state. But they're not part of the stereotype of North Dakota, and why not? They are an important part of the state. Sometimes I wonder if it has to do with that stereotype of rural America is the real America, and the stereotype of real America, let's be honest, is white. So, they're not, so therefore, let's just not talk about them. But, one of the differences in rural America also is if they are segregated like that, there's a distance factor. Now, I live in the city. Yes, there may be segregated neighborhoods, but everything is close enough together that you are going to run into other people, other cultures, other races, and so on. So you are able to convince yourself when you live in North Dakota that it's a white state. when it clearly is not. Now, what's bothered some people and has raised a lot of tension is just the speed at which diversity has changed. I put a link there to a Washington Post article. That was link number 3 that just flashed there. It basically pointed out how quickly in the last 10 years or so the face of rural America has changed. I'm in one of the counties that has quickly changed. One of the, what is it, the second map down, I think? I forget now. Well, doesn't matter. Anyway, my county shows up as one that has changed a lot. Now, if you read on in that same Washington Post article, you will find that some parts of the United States were always diverse. High diversity in 2000, little change by 2014, and I noticed that a lot of those were in the South, also around the Native American reservations here in North Dakota, and then there are those areas that were very diverse and are getting more diverse, and then there's a map on there about low diversity and hasn't changed by 2014, and knowing what I know about North Dakota, I can kind of see why those areas have not changed. When I look over in Pennsylvania, again, it's certain parts, it's certain pockets. Appalachia is not seeing a lot of change. So anyway, that Washington Post article is quite interesting. I definitely read that one if you want to read through my links. I mean, I like to think people at least peek at a few of them, but that's a good one. Penn State has a neat article about how diversity is on the rise everywhere. I mean, it's not just rural America. It's been rising in the cities for a long time. But they also point out that it's here to stay. And one of the reasons is it becomes self-sustaining. Now, it can be very awkward to be like the one Chinese person living in town. Then you're kind of like their token. There's our Chinese person and whatever. But you get a few other people like you, because I'm sorry to say, we do tend to cling to people who look like us, or act like us, or think like us. You get a few people, then you can start to build a community, and you feel more secure in your own identity. It's very uncomfortable being the only one that's like you, or thinking you're the only one that's like you. So as people move into these communities, others will follow. So I find it interesting looking at the map here in North Dakota, which is an area I'm familiar with, looking at the counties which have seen a big increase in minority populations and those which haven't. One of the reasons I live in one which has seen a big increase is we have jobs here. Some of the counties which have not seen much increase don't have a lot of jobs or growth. So if there's no opportunity, there's nothing going to bring new people in. So it's just the people who are already there. And that's why those counties have remained we're all majority, almost all majority white in North Dakota. But that's why they have not seen the increase in minority population. Won't mention any names, but you can look at the map, draw your own conclusion. An area like this that I'm driving through, lately they have seen a large growth in minority population and people in general because of the proximity to recreational opportunities. I mean, driving this road, I thought, wouldn't it be kind of neat to live here? I thought about it. Probably can't afford it, especially not on what I make. But those are areas which will appeal. You find some parts of America that are appealing to retirees, for example. Other parts that have jobs. Places that aren't seeing this are still doing this whole problem with rural America because large swaths of rural America are emptying out. There's no opportunity, no jobs there. The young people leave, the old people stay, and the old people die, and populations shrink. And then there's even less reason to move there. So, to do a big, this is rural America type of video, I realized that I just need to point all of this out. Rural America is in flux. And, maybe I could have said the same back in the past, but probably not. One of the other things that we're seeing change is the number of Christians in the white Christians, I should say, in the United States. I'm sure you remember this too. People talking about how, well, the only reason that these churches are declining is because they're not doubling down on their beliefs. Well, even the white evangelical Protestants are in decline, along with the more liberal Protestants and Catholics. Now, I will point out that non-Christian religious groups are still a pretty small part of the United States. But the Catholic Church in the United States is transforming. According to the American Religious Landscape Survey, which I should probably put a link here. Alright, so I just did that. I'm trying to put the links in as I film this time, just something different to try. Anyway, the Catholic Church is becoming less and less white. 25 years ago, according to this survey, 87% of Catholics were white, non-Hispanic, compared to 55% today. Fewer than 4 in 10 under the age of 30 are white, non-Hispanic, and 52% are Hispanic. That's interesting. Let's see, a couple other neat ones here. No state is less religiously diverse than Mississippi. That state is heavily Protestant and dominated by the Baptist denomination. 6 in 10 Protestants in Mississippi are Baptist. And no state is more religiously diverse than New York State. Although, fun fact with New York State, I don't have a link for you, but trust me. Don't trust me, actually. I should have a link. I'm just too lazy to look it up. But New York, outside the cities, is quite a different state from New York in the cities. But their cities are so big that that's kind of what's going on there. Also kind of interesting, the cultural center of the Catholic Church is shifting south. I kind of surprised me. But, yeah. And then, the white Christians have become a minority in the Democratic Party. They get very upset, and that's why this whole identification between being Republican and being religious, well, if only 29% of your membership is white Christian, you're really not going to pander to them anymore. And of course, that may feel like persecution to those white Christians. I don't know. That's a topic for another video. But actually, that's another good video good link to look through. One of the interesting things I find is the growth in the religiously unaffiliated. The older you are, the more likely you are to be religious, especially either white evangelical or white mainline Protestant. Or, I guess white Catholic was up there too. Younger people just are not religious. There's a link to religious diversity by state. I already mentioned Mississippi as one of the least diverse. North Dakota is not particularly diverse, but it's nowhere near the scale of Mississippi either. We have some diversity here. Actually, overall, just a very interesting study to read. And I could keep reading through it, but this isn't meant to be a religious video either. I'm trying to give you an overall view of how rural America is not just one thing. And that we are in a period of flux. And yes, that is uncomfortable. Now, TheWeek.com has an interesting article that goes into how employment has affected this and the movement of people. Like, for example, the last recession affected people west of the Mississippi a lot less than it affected people east of it, especially rural areas. And it had to do with the types of industries here. Agriculture, the increase in oil prices meant a lot more oil jobs. In fact, some communities here in western North Dakota have been permanently changed by that. Watford City, we never used to think about homeless people. Now, no, the homeless population didn't look like it would in New York City, but dealing with the same issues. Families living in their cars. Kids who don't know where they're going home to tonight because they don't know where their family's living right now. Those are all things that didn't used to happen here. I'm not saying that was a particularly good thing, because I just think of the kids. But what it did do is it woke people up that, oh, hardworking people sometimes do struggle to get ahead. Oh, these people are really after the same things as me, a better life for themselves and for their families. Funny. And a lot of those people continue to live in Watford City. And the housing situation is better there, although it's still kind of an expensive place to live. Other changes have resulted in changing jobs, like, the growth of poultry over beef has changed where people are working. There's more poultry plants, which are getting set up often in more rural communities. That's kind of interesting. But of course, there's still that stereotype. If I say rancher, what do you think of? If I say cowboy, what do you think of? My guess is you're picturing somebody white. And I'll be honest, even though I know better because I personally know Native American cowboys and Native American ranchers, the image that first flashes to my mind is white. And these jobs are bringing in new minorities that maybe we haven't seen in rural communities before. Somali, Iraqi, Central American. They haven't typically been employed by these businesses, and now they are. New faces in these rural communities. We have some right-wing media here in North Dakota that are upset over Somalis living in Fargo and trying to do the whole, oh, they bring disease thing, which is kind of a gross way to handle saying I don't like people that don't look like me. But that also is part of what illustrates why North Dakota's rural looks different from this part of South Dakota's rural, and looks different from West Virginia's rural. West Virginia's rural is shrinking and losing people. We're not. I'm going to throw another link at you, this time from the Atlantic. This link, sorry, I thought I was going to get the hiccups there. This link gives you the 5 most and least racially diverse parts of the counties in the country. And it's interesting. First of all, I always think of maybe the lower peninsula of Michigan as being more racially diverse, and the upper peninsula being kind of like the North Dakota of Michigan. Look at the map. Upper Peninsula is pretty diverse. I was actually surprised that North Dakota is more racially diverse than states like Maine or Vermont or New Hampshire. I just kind of assumed they'd be more diverse, but they're not. Let's see. Oh boy, yeah, I can't make out the individual county where I live on the map, but I know we're not terribly diverse compared to some of the counties in the state, but I find the amount of diversity in the South interesting. And, if you look at various minorities, kind of makes sense. Latino population is going to live in different parts than, say, the African American population. I kind of wish that this article would have focused more on some other minorities, like Native American. I see there is a link here, and it says pop-up blocked. Sorry, I'm looking at the link, not the video. Let's see if that works. I didn't notice that before. Oh, here we go. So African American, Native American. Yeah. Okay, and the Native American population is big in other areas. Asian population. You can guess. So search through that article. You'll see the nice link that gives you a few more maps about other minorities. And when I do my video on rural America about religion, I'm going to have to find some links about religious minorities. Now, we're in Hill City now. I'm going to put a stop to this here pretty quick. Let's wrap it up to a conclusion. My point behind making today's video is I was going to do a video about how not diverse rural America is. And perhaps compared to the cities, it's not. But at the same time, rural, two things. First of all, it is more diverse than you think because it's stereotype versus reality. That's why I like numbers. Whatever my feelings or opinion are, that's what numbers are do. Is they say, I don't care. Here's the facts, dude. The other thing I liked was it points out that what I'm going to say is probably going to end up outdated in a few years. So it's an interesting time to be alive in rural America, I guess. And I have to say, the faults I find with rural America, one of the things I like is that I can get out away from all these people. Have the road to myself, more than this. Have vistas like this that aren't cluttered with people. And that's something that will probably deserve a video of its own. I want to look at religion in rural and urban America, maybe crime. There's a lot of obesity, health. There's a lot of interesting topics to look at. Political affiliation. And some people commented on my last video about, well, how's it compare to other countries? And that is a good question. I always think of the Netherlands as being very progressive. You get out into some of the rural areas and you find that, oh, this is kind of a lot like right-wing United States. So I wonder if rural areas around the world share a lot in common just because by nature of being rural. Which begs the question, what makes rural different? So I'll leave it there and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.